Chaos reigned among the other craft as the rules of boating were tossed aside for self-preservation.
This is I Don't Even Own a Television, Meg, a novel of deep terror.
1, 2, 3. There are books that are good, there are books that are bad. There's some books so fucking awful you wish you never had read them at all. 'Cause a novel can ruin your life. Hey buddy, I don't even own a television.
Welcome to I Don't Even Own a Television. It's a podcast, if you were listening last week, about anchovies and ska, and also bad books.
And we're not moving far away from that this time.
Nope, we're not. But this time around, we're talking about a book that is about to be made into a movie, so we're very topical and relevant.
Super topical and relevant. And as a topical, relevant guy, I am Chris Anchovy, the big kind, Collision.
I am J.W. Skipper Friedman. That took me a while to think of a good one. But the book we're talking about is Meg, a novel of deep terror by Steve Alten, soon to be a Disney Pictures production, I believe, starring the one and only Jason Statham.
Woo!
Not as the shark, unfortunately.
Bullethead himself.
So why did we do this book? How did we find this book?
I think we found this book because something made the rounds over the last couple of weeks as this movie got released.
I don't think it's out yet.
As the preview came out, rather.
Yeah, and so Twitter and social media in general was kind of a buzz about a particular Deadspin article.
Yeah, that contains the following phrase that turns out, or the following passage, which is not from this book, but is from a much later book in the series, because for some reason this got turned into a series.
There are like 6 of them.
Right. Now, with Philadelphia Phillies slugger Pat Burrell closing in on Barry Bonds' record, the San Franciscans are arriving in droves, some to cheer, most to boo, all wanting to be a part of baseball history. The boaters in McCovey Cove want something more. And apparently what happens right after that is, I believe Burrell does indeed crank a dinger into McCovey Cove. The boats go nuts, trying to get this record-setting home run ball.
Uh-huh.
And then what goes nuts, Jay?
A giant shark erupts from under them. Yes. It's worth noting for people who don't watch baseball, one of the notable features of where the Giants play, AT&T Park, is McCovey Cove. There's literally a strip of about 20 feet of concrete between the right field wall and a body of water that people bring their boats out into, hoping to catch home run balls and stuff like that. So there's always kind of a clutch of watercraft there that the Meg interrupts and devours.
But this put this on our radar for an obvious way, but it also sowed the seeds of some things that we're going to see throughout this episode. So, for example, when Deadspin finds out this hilarious thing and is like, why Pat Burrell of all people, right? Like, how could he have done this? So what did they do? They're journalists. They sent the author an email. What did this author do? Because he's actually, it seems, quite accessible. He answered the fucking email. So let's hear what he has to say. I wanted to have this scene in San Francisco in the bay there behind the stadium, Alten said. I thought that would make a really cool attack scene for a megalodon. But I'm a Philly guy, so I'm not going to pick somebody who I don't like. But when I was writing Primal Waters, the only slugger on the team was Pat Burrell.
Burrell.
Alten says he tried to give him a signed copy of the book, but he wasn't interested. He said he tore out the signature page and instead gave the book to a much friendlier Jim Tomei.
A couple things.
There's one last thing, sorry. But there's a twist ending, which Alten informed me of. By the time the paperback came out, the Phillies had a new slugger. So in the paperback copy of Primal Waters, the all-time home run record is broken by none other than Ryan Howard.
All right. So it's worth mentioning that in the time span since this book was written, Pat Burrell went on to play for the San Francisco Giants and was kind of instrumental in their 2010 World Series win, which I thought was pretty interesting. And also, it says a lot to me that one of the things that bugged me the most about this isn't necessarily the unrealistic nature of a shark in McCovey Cove. It's the unrealistic nature of a right-handed hitter going home run opposite side in AT&T Park. That never happens.
It's a podcast about baseball sharks.
And anchovies.
Anchovies.
But yeah, so this was a trip. I've said it before previously. We've read a lot of stupid things on this show. Sometimes they're stupid and they infuriate me. Other times they're stupid and delight me. I'd say this fell right in the middle somewhere, but maybe skewing a little more towards delight. You have to get past some very regressive stuff in this book, though. It's worth noting this is an 80s movie. I mean, it's Jaws, basically.
Yeah, I mean, Jaws might actually be a little too finely crafted. This is a lot like Piranha.
Yeah, or Deep Blue Sea.
Yeah.
Which I guess he's hella salty about because it came out. The author of this book has done a couple interviews where he said they ripped off his idea.
Salty. Like the ocean.
It's true.
The ocean that conceals the most fearsome predator of all time.
Well, wait. Let's not get too ahead of ourselves. I think the people at home need to know the story behind this complicated piece of lit. So let's do a plot in 60 seconds.
Nobody knows if you're finished or not. You got 60 seconds to give them the plot. Plot in 60 seconds.
All right, so in this segment, Collision, you are going to have 60 seconds to attempt to sum up this modern tale of a man chasing a great white sea monster.
Moby Dick, this ain't.
Yeah, I was going to say, Melville wept.
Yeah, let's calibrate them expectations, and as Sublime might say, let's calibrate them down.
Well, as 311 might say, you know that we have always been down, so that's not a problem. I just made you spit coffee.
That's true. There's now coffee in my nose, which should make for a tremendous listening experience matched only by the pleasure of the physical experience. And in case you can't tell, I am stalling because what I'm about to do is something I almost never resort to, but this time I think it has to happen.
Are you going off the dome?
We're going off the dome, and we're starting with the jacket copy.
Okay, well, get ready.
Yeah.
Go.
On a top-secret dive into the Pacific Ocean's deepest canyon that actually doesn't happen in the book, but is referred to repeatedly in flashbacks, Jonas Taylor found himself face-to-face with the largest and most ferocious predator in the history of the animal kingdom. The sole survivor of the mission, Taylor is haunted by what he's sure he saw, but still can't prove exists. Carcharodon megalodon, the massive ancestor of the great white shark. The average prehistoric meg weighs in at 20 tons and could tear apart a Tyrannosaurus Rex in seconds, which happens in the first chapter, and it's all downhill from there. Written off as a crackpot suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder, Taylor refuses to forget the depths that nearly cost him his life. With a PhD in paleontology under his belt, which... Taylor spends years theorizing, lecturing, and writing about the possibility that Meg still feeds at the deepest levels of the sea. This happens while his wife is boning his best friend. But it takes an old friend in need to get him to return to the water and a hotshot female submarine pilot who he met when she was 17 to dare him back into a high-tech miniature sub, which is mostly plexiglass. Diving deeper than he ever has before, Taylor will face terror like he's never imagined but has actually seen before, and what he finds could turn the tides bloody red until the end of time.
Oh, that was so much more than 60 seconds.
Yeah, well, it was a fun ride.
Yeah.
And I had to shoehorn in some editorializations, and I can't believe they left out the, mean wannabe famous journalist wife who's sleeping with his inexplicably tycoon-like best friend.
Once again, 80s movie. Like, this wife is like every quote-unquote, like, conniving Jezebel type character from every shitty movie where a dude gets a divorce and you're supposed to think that it's, like, totally justified because she was so horrible.
It's extremely the kind of role that Sharon Stone got before she became Sharon Stone.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, totally. So there's something I want to mention before we go any further, in that we read different versions of this book. You have the hardback, which was published when? Does it say in there?
I think 2007.
Okay.
Let me look. Oh, sorry, 1997.
Okay, 1997. That's what I thought. So I read the ebook of this, which I did not realize is actually very different. He re-released this book, and he wanted to put the prequel, Meg Origins, at the beginning, so I've read that, and you haven't.
That's true.
But then, I guess he realized his writing style had matured so much, quote-unquote, he went back and rewrote the entire book. So there are swaths of this where we've read different versions of the same events. This is going to get crazy, folks.
It's like Rashomon, but with a shark.
Yeah.
Actually, hold on. I have to go pitch a movie.
23 stories from Sharkville.
Fuck yeah.
Okay.
A little beach community tormented by a shark and an inability to agree on what really happened.
So you may have been hearing this and thinking, geez, this sounds a lot like Jaws. And you know what? You're totally right. This book is not only just like Jaws, it lampshades it at least twice. At one point, a character tells another character, we're going to need a bigger boat. And then later on, a cameraman is told by someone else, focus on your job, Spielberg.
Ooh, that definitely was in the punch-up round, because I did not, I believe, read the word Spielberg in my copy.
So he went back to his book and decided to make the shit he was ripping off even more obvious, I guess.
Maybe he just felt like he had been called on it one too many times, so he was like, I know, I'll Ernest Klein my way out of this with a quick wink of the cap and tip of the wink and stuff.
It's worth noting, Steve Alten is all over the internet, as you mentioned before. He's very accessible. He does a lot of interviews with podcasts and like YouTube shows and stuff like that, generally through Skype. I watched a long one earlier. He's set up in a room where workout equipment is strategically positioned behind him, and then he has wall-to-wall bookshelves that contain a bunch of footballs and autographed sports memorabilia, DVDs, and I think maybe 10 books.
See, that kind of bums me out, because I did not do any of that research. And I really kind of wanted to like the guy, so I'm going to pretend I didn't hear any of that. Because a big chunk of this book, or the experience of reading this book, is definitely like, hey, remember Jaws? And you're like, yeah.
What if Jaws was a different shark?
Right. Well, what if Jaws, but bigger?
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
and you're like, what?
So he kind of looks like Robert De Niro, except real muscly.
He is quite muscly, but like a big part of the vibe of this book is also like, kind of, do you remember back in the halcyon days when people were like, my Pokemon, let me show you them?
Yes.
Like a big chunk of this book was kind of like a very enthusiastic guy with like, my shark facts, let me tell you them.
Okay.
And I kind of liked that, so I wanted to like the dude.
So in my notes, and I don't know if this is just because of the punched up version or what, but I wrote that this reads like being lectured by a frat boy who just watched Shark Week. Because the tone of it to me is somewhat, I'm not going to go super hyperbolic here and say reprehensible, but the tone is very doodly in an obnoxious way, like in a way that a lot of men's adventure novels are.
I think that's fair. We should note that this is the kind of book where the third person omniscient narration includes at least 3 sentences that end with exclamation points.
Oh, yeah.
Which is definitely a mark of a certain kind of book. We should note that this is the kind of book where you can kind of see the cut-paste transitions from the encyclopedia. And then somebody puts quote marks around them and just has a character explaining something to another character.
Oh, yeah, and people refer to each other's relationships with each other like, oh, look, it's Dick Danielson.
My
you
brother.
mean my ex-commanding officer?
Yeah.
Things like that. So.
Yeah. It is good to see you, David, who is my brother. We grew up together as brothers of the same mother. And now it is my pleasure to offer to buy you, my brother, a drink.
Yeah, totally. I mean,
before it starts raining.
That is barely an exaggeration. So what we're dealing with here basically is the story of a giant prehistoric great white shark that has been living in the Mariana Trench.
Yeah.
Gets lured up to the surface by some dirigibles. No, not dirigibles, submergibles.
Yeah.
And then basically gives birth and then goes on a killing spree.
I mean, killing spree, then birth, then continued killing spree.
And the birth is basically just a setup for sequels, which is pretty awesome. I do want to talk a little bit about how this book came to pass. I know you haven't been doing the research, but I found this kind of fascinating. This is the movie version of this has been in development hell for like almost 2 decades now, which I'm only bringing up.
Wait, so this came out because it's 2018 now.
Yes.
It was published in 1997. So like instantly somebody was like, oh, we gotta make a movie out of this puppy.
It's better than that. Okay. So the deal is before he even approached a literary agent or shopped this book to publishers, he paid a company that does movie licensing to shop it around to studios. So basically, this book was optioned for a movie before he found a publisher, and that's the reason that the book got published. Bantam Doubleday basically picked it up because they're like, oh, a movie about this is coming out any day now.
Right. That actually makes sense of a huge amount of the structure of the book. I mean, so we've read a lot of this kind of like monster of some kind book. We're pretty used to the character gets introduced a third of the way through the book, and you know for a fact that they're not going to be involved in the plot. They're just cannon fodder.
Oh, yeah.
And this book does that a bunch of times, but it also does something that you see much more in movies than in, books, where those scenes will be perfectly bookended and will end with like a kind of B-movie beat to them.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So there's one that... I don't know if you want to talk about this, but there's this kind of self-contained surfing moment.
Oh, yes.
That starts off with some bully surfers and some nice surfers trying to impress some girls. And it will not shock the listener to know that the bully surfer gets et the fuck up by a shark, and the nice guy surfer barely escapes with, like, I think at least two, shark mouth closing just an inch behind his outstretched whatever scenes.
Yeah.
But it might surprise you to know that at the end, the nice guy collapses on the beach and looks up at the girl and is like, "So how about that date?"
Can I read this scene? I was going to do this as my
I wish that you would.
I had two things picked out for dramatic reading that I couldn't decide on. So this is going to be a little lengthy, but I feel like it's worth every second.
So cue up your copy of Wipeout.
Yeah, I was thinking about maybe putting some Link Ray behind this or something like that.
Or like
Some
a
Dick Dale.
pipeline by
Yeah.
the, what is it, Ventures?
The
Maybe?
Ventures, yeah. Okay. Dylan rolled on his stomach and paddled, stroking fast as he could, his pounding heart threatening to explode from his chest. The megalodon turned, zeroing in on these new vibrations. The female's peppered white snout broke the surface 30 feet behind him, snorting sea like a Brahma bull. Dylan slammed the left side of his face against the board, simultaneously gripping the outer edges with his ankles as he plunged his arms into the water, double stroking furiously. He screamed as he registered the monster's nostrils along the soles of his bare feet, and then he fell over the edge of a cliff. Plunging down the rolling mountain of water, Dylan somehow managed to remember to pop up at the last moment on his exhausted legs, feet wide, crouching low. He reached back with his right hand, the 66-foot wave roaring at him like a tornado, its whitewater crest 20 feet above his head, threatening to bury him within the sea floor, etc., etc. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here. Austin never slowed. With the monstrous shark less than 20 feet behind Dylan, he cut across its path, racing past his brother who leaped onto the wave runner's tow rig, Wade grabbing him before he could roll over the side. The jet ski shot through the shallows and straight onto the beach, the delirious crowd chanting, "Dylan, Dylan, Dylan." Austin leaped off the wave runner and joined Wade, who was hugging Dylan, slapping him on the back as the crowd swelled, parted by an official from the Billabong XXL Global Big Wave Contest, who presented him with a trophy, congratulating him on the ride of the day.
You are fucking kidding me.
No, Dylan was exhausted, shaking with fear, the burst of adrenaline nearly forcing him to puke. He caught himself as Kelsey appeared. A huge smile stretched across her face, tears in her blue eyes as she hugged him. "Are you okay?" she asked. "You scared the hell out of me." Dylan cleared his throat and took a breath. "Yeah, it's cool." Then, seeing his opening, he flashed a crooked smile. "So, Kels, you doing anything tonight?"
Okay, so this is going to go even longer than you thought, because I want to read you just some highlights of the pre-punch-up version.
Oh, okay, so... Wow, all right, yeah, please.
Okay. Without hesitating, Jim slammed his face against the board, simultaneously gripping the outer edges with his ankles as he plunged his arms into the water,
Jim?
double stroking furiously. Jim registered the monster's teeth on the soles of his bare feet as the wave caught the surfboard. Popping up at the last moment on his exhausted legs, feet wide, crouching low, Jim reached his right hand below the board as he plummeted blind to the bottom of the 30-foot swell.
Punching up just means making measurements bigger.
Jim Richards screamed as the lifeguards grabbed him. The beach was lit by tiki torches, a crowd of over 100 having gathered. They were chanting, "Jim, Jim, Jim." Zach was hugging him now.
Wow.
He caught himself as Marie approached. A huge smile stretched across her face. Seeing his opening, he gave Marie a crooked smile and said, "So, you doing anything tonight?"
Wow, they changed all the names.
They changed all the names. The brother is not in the water anymore. And there's definitely no third douche on a fucking jet ski.
Yeah, and there's guys on jet skis towing the surfers out. to the Billabong Double XL Big Wave whatever the fuck contest.
These are also just locals surfing. There's no Billabong Double XL surf contest going on. I don't think we, by any conventional sense of the word, read the same book.
No, we read the same story, but I feel like this is almost like a game of literary telephone in a way. I do like it that he name drops some people who may or may not be actual professional surfers at the beginning of mine, and one of their names is Buzzy Kerbox. And I'm going to just pretend that is the name of an actual surfer, and if it's not, please don't tell me, because I want to live in a world where that...
No, he was a second baseman for the White Sox.
Yeah, I think he and Pat Burrell were neck and neck in the all-time slugger ratings for a while. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's very different. I can't believe Jim became Dylan and Marie became Kelsey. I guess that's making it more, modern, 2010s.
Yeah, and then they'll have cell phones and Tamagotchis.
Oh, man, that shark scared me so much I forgot to feed my virtual pet.
Maybe we can share this. We can scare the shark off by plugging in our AOL CDs and making the modem noise at it.
I don't know. Judging from the thing that happens over and over in this book, there's nothing sharks like more than vibrations.
That's true. Hey, Jay, how many sense organs do sharks have?
A bunch. I forgot the exact number, but he makes sure to describe it every single time a shark is mentioned. I know they have a line along their sides.
Yep.
Their gills, their nostrils, their eyes.
They've got the islets of Langerhans or whatever it is. Pianucci's organs.
Yeah, sharks.
Sacco and Vanzetti's, ampules.
The Marx Brothers.
Yeah.
No, truly, sharks are nature's perfect killing machine, and the megalodon, whoa.
Even more perfect.
Yeah,
Except
definitely.
It never does quite explain. So it explains why it survived. Oh, the other ones, I was just trying to figure out why the others didn't survive if they were so fucking perfect. But it turns out that the oceans got too... record scratch cold. There's a possibility of an implicit anti-global warming science tack in this book.
You're giving it too much credit, because I have read Meg Origins, which was at the beginning of mine, and I can tell you exactly why. The way the ocean works, at least according to our author here, is it gets colder as you go down, and then there's a very, very cold section, and then beneath that in the trench itself, because of these things called coal smokers.
It's getting hot in here.
Yeah. So his theory, or his postulation, I should say, is that there are a ton of these megs that live down there that have never ventured through the cold patch above them.
Right.
And in Meg Origins, or it might be the beginning of this book, one of the megalodons gets injured and is pulled up through the cold water. The other one chases it to feed on it and finds itself in the warm water above.
That's in this. It actually is sort of sounding to me like stuff that was in the middle of this book got turned into Meg Origins.
That might be possible.
Your copy, because it's actually one of the cooler scenes is they do harpoon one that they think is the big one, but no, it's the smaller male.
Yeah.
And Big Mama, like literally, it's actually fairly well described, like, is just, feeding in a shark-like feeding frenzy. Wow, that really failed. But is insulated from the cold water by a sheeted gout of blood.
Yeah, the warm blood.
From its former mate.
As it's devouring it and making its way up from the depths.
Just pretty cool if you think about it.
The one thing this book does do really well is gore.
It does gore better than Rhino. Now who's making?
Hey, I watched your abs last night. What a goalie.
He actually had a magnificent game.
He
I
did.
watched it too, which is why some of my grasp of the details of this book might be a little shakier than normal.
I'm sorry though, I can't trade sports positions with you, because I still don't know much about hockey. Except, did he beat Patrick Waugh's record or tie it?
He tied a very side record for most saves in a regulation playoff game.
Okay, gotcha.
So what you might all be excited to know is that the man that we're talking about is the third string goaltender, and his nickname is the Hamburglar.
And unfortunately not on the San Jose Sharks, which would have been very apropos.
That would have been very apropos, but fuck the San Jose Sharks, and having read this book, I like these Sharks.
Yeah, these Sharks are much cooler, and they don't play in the HP Pavilion or whatever it's called now. Wouldn't it be cool if a shark just busted through the ice during a hockey game?
into the shark tank.
I bet that's happened in one of the sequels.
If it doesn't, like, Steve Alten, get at us. We have some ideas, and all we want is a story by credit.
Yeah, I don't think that's happening.
Okay,
this guy's still salty about Deep Blue Sea.
I'm not upset about anything, but I do like to say positive and then occasionally negative things about things.
Oh, me too. So why don't we do a segment dedicated just to that? Here's high points, low points.
High points are high,
And the points are low.
high points.
Low points, get ready to go.
All right, so sometimes we say positive things and then negative things. You may have caught that from the previous teaser. But we like to do the compliment sandwich style, so we start out with the high points. Collision, do you want to lead us off?
Yeah, we've already talked about how the gore is pretty good, so that won't be my real high point. But I do have to say that at least some of the dickheads introduced just to be slaughtered were done pretty well. And it's the kind of book where you don't get like, a nice boy bringing his grandma some ice cream gets threatened and then either killed or saved. You get a seething dickhead gets introduced and killed. And we'll get to this in a second when I get to my low point, but I kind of enjoyed that. There was like a visceral rush that was kind of fun. There was some energy to those that I really did enjoy. It's got a real B-movie vibe that I kind of liked.
My very first note is sharks hate bullies.
Yes.
Because everybody who dies in this just about is bullying the shit out of someone beforehand.
Yeah.
So this does, though, kind of lead me to my first high point, which is just, and this is specific to the version I read, I think, is that the revised and expanded edition, it features a lot of hilarious examples of wedging modern things into a book that was very obviously written a long time ago. Like, you mentioned everyone that's introduced just to die is mostly a seething dickhead, and that's generally true. But I feel like a bit of the author's kind of old guy bias sneaks through in the expanded edition. Your scene has the the whaling boat, right? The whale watching trip?
Yes.
Okay. So in mine, and I know this is not the case in yours, the first person to die on the whale watching boat, which, surprise, the megalodon appears out of nowhere and starts picking people off, is a 16-year-old girl whose primary characteristic is that she won't get off her phone. Which apparently also puts you in the realm of deserves to get eaten by a shark, according to Steve Alten. So...
That's not cool, man.
No, but yeah, there's a lot of little scenes like that. Just, kind of very like, greetings, fellow kids, attempts to modernize something that's not very modern. And I like that a lot. There's it's awkward, but in a very funny way.
Yeah. Probably a good time to pivot to low points.
Okay.
While I like that sharks hate bullies, and that did give a lot of energy to it, I didn't like that all of the main characters are also just seething dickheads all the time. Like,
true.
I didn't need, like, the wife not just to be neglected, but to be like an ambitious in an evil way and awful person who's sleeping with the guy who's introduced as the best friend, but then spends like the last third of the book saying every third line, I've never cared about anyone except this woman who died. Oh yeah, she dies at the teeth of a shark. Sorry.
Spoiler, the bad person gets eaten by a shark.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I didn't need them to be quite as bad as they were. I didn't need the rugged helicopter pilot buddy of Jonas's to be like a drug running pimp from Vietnam, which he was in my version.
Not in mine.
Apparently not in your version.
Yeah, no. In mine, he's just a ladies' man.
Oh, well, in my version, he got washed out of Nam for occasionally not committing war crimes when he was told to, but instead stealing helicopters and like ferrying soldiers back and forth for drugs and sex workers.
Was his name also Mac in your book?
His name was Mac.
They didn't change his name.
And I didn't need Bud. The names in my version are particularly hilarious. They're all very, very generic. Mac, Bud. Bud, the best friend, actually blows his head off rather than get eaten by a shark at the end.
That happens in mine too.
And so that was just kind of like, that's also a very common, I think, B-movie trope, but it just got really wearisome.
Yeah. So I'm definitely on the same page here, and I think a lot of my beef with this is what I alluded to earlier, in that there is a lot of just casual grossness in the same way that you see in a lot of B movies, and it's easy to write off if you're, in a position to do so, but I could also see lots of this book being incredibly offensive if you are, one of the people that he's talking about, and he's not even trying to be mean most of the time.
Yeah.
But like, say, Japanese Americans in this book are given a very, very questionable portrayal. There's a character who is a man who's supposed to be in his 60s, who's grown up for the most part in America, who still, says hi instead of yes, and refers to people as so-and-so san and things like that. I mean, it's really like Mr. Miyagi-ish. It's pretty ugly. Not my favorite part.
Yeah.
And what really ties into this is something we haven't talked about yet, which is new to the expanded edition. There is the Adopt an Author program, which is something that our author spearheaded, which is an effort to get this book into schools. The idea being that teachers who teach this book can call him up for a Skype chat or, send out questions from their students and things like that.
It's savvy. I'll give him that.
It is, and I do appreciate encouraging kids to read, but I feel like a book that, casually uses the bad F word is maybe not the best candidate for this.
And kids who want to read about sharks should do what I did and try to read Jaws and be actually kind of excited that instead of it being a rip-roaring adventure novel about killer sharks, it's mostly a rip-roaring marital infidelity novel with a shark in like 2 chapters.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess, normally I feel like
That'll really freak out a 7th grader.
It would be slightly easier for me to be like, haha, this book is stupid, if he wasn't actively trying to put it in the hands of impressionable teenagers. That's a little weird to me. So yeah, that's my first low point for sure.
Fair enough. Second low point, I don't honestly really have one, except I do find the constant rewriting a little bit exhausting. I guess if I had to name a low point, it would be how much of this book really bridges the gap between what you could call a novel and what most people would describe as an extended Wikipedia edit battle. You know, there's an awful lot of no, actually a lot of paleontologists believe, but really scientists don't understand, and it reads almost as well as sprinkling little chunks of ham into eggnog would taste.
Oh, gross. Oh, that just affected me on a visceral level.
It's a little lumpy is what I'm saying.
Man. So for me, I guess my second low point is just the repetition and kind of the formulaic nature of the way this book works, in that there is basically one thing that happens 7 or 8 times in a row.
Yeah.
And it is big shark appears, big shark senses a vibration, big shark attacks some sort of seafaring vessel, big shark submerges, disappearing for a few weeks, and then repeat ad nauseum.
Yeah.
And this could easily be one of those stories, but the fact that, it happens literally, I think, 7 different times, and every time it feels like the conclusion of the novel.
Yeah.
They just throw in a different character to get mauled the next time or whatever. I keep saying they instead of he, because this really just doesn't feel like the work of an artist as much as a committee, but I know this was one man's thing.
Feels like it was written by... Yeah, it does feel like it was written by, a team of punch-up artists.
Yeah. But yeah, so once you've gotten about 100 pages into this book, you've read everything it has to offer, and then it just kind of keeps hitting you with the same thing over and over again, and it got very wearying for me by the end. So yeah, that's my other low point for sure.
Yeah, I think that couldn't be more on point. But like the point of a harpoon, let's penetrate the hide of this tough read and get to a high point.
Okay. Well, you've been going first, so why don't you start us off?
Geez. There are so many transitions in this that legitimately made me laugh.
Yeah.
And I don't know if those made it into the final version, but there's so many moments where I'm going to read one, which is a tiny bit long, but we'll give you the flavor of how well planned and then executed this book was.
Okay.
Bud Harris gathered his belongings and stuffed them into a brown paper bag provided by the orderly. Unshaven, badly in need of a shower, the once proud entrepreneur had been reduced to a feeble shell of his former self. Deeply depressed after having witnessed his lover's death, Bud was also suffering from exhaustion brought on by a lack of REM sleep. Memories of his awful experience were now manifesting themselves in his subconscious mind in the form of night terrors. More frightening than the worst nightmare, the night terrors were violent, surreal dreams of death. For the last 5 nights, Bud had let out blood-curdling cries that rocked the west wing of the hospital's 4th floor. Even after the frantic nurses managed to wake him, he would still be screaming, blindly flinging his fists into the air. After the 2nd episode, the orderlies had to strap his wrists and ankles to the bed while he slept. Bud Harris no longer cared whether he lived or died. He felt alone and in pain, uninterested in eating and afraid to sleep. Extremely worried, his doctors brought in a psychiatrist who decided that a change of environment might do the patient some good, and so it was decided that Bud would be discharged. Does this sound like a guy who's ready to not be in the hospital?
No, it doesn't. But this is so interesting to me.
Or does this sound like a character who, for plot-related reasons, needs to not be in the hospital?
Yeah, the latter, for sure. But I want to read my version of this same scene because I had a part of it highlighted, and this was definitely punched up like in a masterful way. Bud shot up in bed, screaming, his right arm covered in blood. A Jamaican nurse entered the hospital room, followed by a male orderly. He tore his IV out again. The nurse quickly slipped on a pair of rubber gloves. "It's okay, Mr. Harris," she soothed. "It was just another nightmare." "A nightmare? Where am I?" "You're in the hospital. You suffered a nervous breakdown." The orderly opened a drawer and pulled out a set of Velcro straps. "Dr. Wishnov said if he pulls his IV out again, we need to strap him down for the night." "Touch me with those and your next job will be cleaning bedpans." "I clean bedpans every day." "Then I'll crap in bed and you can clean my ass."
Wait, was I saying something about unlikable characters?
All I know is "you can clean my ass" is probably the least threatening. I'll poop all over myself, goddammit. What do you do then?
Wow, way to own the libs.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Also, yeah, it should be mentioned, as you may have noticed, just about every character in this is described as a Jamaican nurse or a Japanese man or a busty woman, or everybody gets a descriptor, and usually it has to do with their race or their physical appearance.
The second paragraph of this book, the second paragraph of the second chapter, where we meet some humans instead of meeting a megalodon fucking up some other dinosaurs, starts off this way. The 42-year-old paleontologist knew he had his audience's attention.
Ooh, that's Dan Brown-esque.
That is 1,000% Dan Brown.
So my high point, and I feel like we just kind of touched on it here, and it's something you mentioned off the air earlier, but just from a sentence-to-sentence level, this book is filled with hilarious moments of just kind of what I would call authorial ineptitude. There are just so many just kind of like one-line flubs where it's just like, you could have said that in such a better way, and it's amazing. And
the page after the one I just read, a 26-year-old male grad student raised his hand. That is an exceptionally weird description.
Yeah. It's Brown. I like Jason grabbed his sleeping bag, his cell phone, and the remains of a taco he had left from lunch. Who eats half a taco?
Not me, I'll fucking tell you that.
Yeah, Jason, you don't deserve tacos.
Jason, get on our level.
But yeah, just so many weird, Marilyn Rhea screamed as she saw her daughter flip headfirst over the side.
My first note on is listed as page 1, and it reads, "Perfect opening scene, lays out what you need to know while still being incredibly poorly written." Because you get sentences like, "The Tyrannosaurus rex, largest and most lethal of all terrestrial carnivores."
"Surfing is a spiritual release with everyone watching out for one another, especially when it comes to the big waves."
What? Yeah. Fuck. Okay, so my new supplemental low point is that I didn't read the punched up version. Somebody got himself a real nice new coffee pot and the big thesaurus and just went ham.
And something I know that, like, I had mentioned earlier off air, and you said you wanted to put a pin in, is just that this book is filled with technical details. And I don't know if this is a high point or a low point for me, because they all feel like they were looked up instead of experienced. And it's really entertainingly clumsy, but it's also really clumsy.
Yeah, there's such weird shit. Let me see if I can find one of the things. It just always leaves me wondering, like, who is this stuff for? Like, there's a long section where he's like looking at stuff with binoculars, and it describes how low light binoculars work. It's like, the aluminum oxide at the base of the rim of the lens picked up the ultraviolet rays being beamed from the 37 watt, and it's like, did you just look at a catalog and copy the details? Like,
probably.
And who enjoys reading that?
I don't know. I mean,
Dads? I don't know.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier the exclamation marks. I just found a great example of it. Never seeing the creature break through the wave, Rick Bowler surfed right into the megalodon's open mouth.
That name is definitely punched up. Before we get out of this, does yours end with a long section where Jonas has to fly his second submersible down the gullet of the shark, then break his way out, walk around in the stomach, cut his way out the stomach with a shark tooth?
Oh, yes.
Walk to the heart, cut the heart out, rip the heart from the veins and arteries of the shark, then go back to the ship and figure out how to get the ship out of the shark.
All of that happens except for the tearing out of the heart, incidentally.
Yeah.
In my version, he does get swallowed by the shark in his submersible.
Right.
He gets out. He uses a shark tooth that he keeps as a lucky charm to cut a hole in the side of the shark's stomach.
Right.
Then he motors his fucking boat into the hole in the shark's stomach so that the shark vomits him up.
Wow, that is the one thing where he got punched down.
I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that this book became inexplicably popular with young kids. And I think that part of his adopt an author program
Not to cut shark hearts out?
maybe to tone down the violence a little bit, but apparently leave in the slurs.
Leave in the slurs and leave in a thing where, like, a guy blows his own brains out on camera.
Yeah, and our hero falls in love with one of his friend's daughters, who is literally a teenager when they first meet.
How many times does the word thong appear in your copy?
Oh, more than a Cisco record.
Yeah. There's an awful lot of descriptions of his wife's thong, all from the point of view of other dudes.
Well, the stick to your job Spielberg line that I referenced earlier is when one of the cameramen for his evil, conniving wife, who's a newscaster, they're shooting some footage of her in a shark tube underwater, and she's wearing a wetsuit, and he says, "This is great footage. Wish she would have wore her thong." And then his wife, who's also on the news team, says, "Stick to your job, Spielberg."
That I think got punched up, because I think in the original, because that scene mostly happens, but I don't think that there's another woman on the news team. I think it's all male except for Jonas's wife.
That doesn't surprise me at all. This book reeks of just, like I said, it's doodly.
It's extremely B-movie, meant to be played on, like, the Sci-Fi Network on a Tuesday afternoon.
Yeah, I hate to compare things to horrible, bad on purpose pop culture artifacts, but this has the vibe of a Sharknado. But I don't think it's supposed to be tacky the way Sharknado was tacky on purpose,
I think it's supposed to be tacky on purpose in exactly the way that Piranha was, which is like, I'm going to go way over the top. I'm going to be kind of like grimdark, but I'm obviously having some fun with it.
Yeah,
that's my vibe. I could well be wrong, and like, so much more about the author that it's really hard for me to maintain my, like, Pollyanna-ish.
Yeah.
Well, it's not quite as good as Slugs, you guys, but it's still pretty good.
After
Bullshit.
watching and reading interviews with this guy, I have a hard time giving him that level of credit. He seems to really approach writing as an entrepreneurial affair, and he just comes off as like an asshole gym teacher. Like, it's yeah, anyway.
Well, I'm still going to hold fast to my thing. I think this is a guy who just, like, shark facts, let me tell you that.
We'll continue to hold on to that dream, and we should probably take a break. So we will be right back.
Keep my eyes on the ball, on the baseball. Love is just like baseball. All it is
is just like baseball. You have played with me like a pawn for most of the night. How'd you get your uniform?
Did it. We're back.
It's Shark Week.
Yeah, apparently. We're talking about the Meg still, and we're going to play some games.
Yeah.
I think we should start out with the nature's most perfect predator of a podcast game, Dramatic Readings. Here's a song.
Dramatic readings. We're gonna make it sound recorded. Dramatic readings. Yeah, I got some words for you.
So, Dramatic Readings, we take parts from this book and we read them to you in all of their glory. I feel like it's good this is a reading-heavy episode because this book just really benefits from that treatment.
Yeah.
Like, we could sit around here and describe it to you all day long, but you're really not getting the full effect unless you hear it in the author's own tone.
You have to really just sink your teeth into the blubber and like rip and score the flesh and feel it like just tumbling down your gullet.
Yeah, so on that note, why don't you start us off, because I know you have some gore.
I do. As the male humpback turned to rejoin the others, the predator circled quickly, intercepting the isolated bull along its flank. With a frightening burst of speed and power, the megalodon launched her 42,000 pounds of muscle and teeth at the retreating humpback. Her upper jaw hyperextended away from her mouth, her bite radius expanding to its full 9 feet, sinking into the helpless humpback's huge fluke.
So many details.
In a fraction of a second, the razor-sharp upper rows of teeth sliced through the muscular tail of the whale before the mammal knew what had happened. So large and powerful was the bite that it completely amputated the fluke from the apex of the whale's tail. The bull writhed in a violent contortion as the megalodon swallowed its prize whole. An agonizing, high-pitched moan reverberated from the bleeding beast. Warm blood gushed from the gaping wound as the crippled humpback feebly attempted to propel itself forward with its massive lateral flippers. The megalodon's second attack came from the front and was even more devastating than the first. Seizing the baleen-fringed edges of the dying creature's mouth within its 9-inch fangs, the Meg ripped and tore apart an entire section of the humpback's throat, whipping its enormous head to and fro like Willow Smith as a long strip of grooved hide and blubber peeled away from the mammal's body like the husk from an ear of corn.
In mine, it's an ear of ripe corn.
Fuck! Helplessly drifting in the ocean swells, the tortured humpback wailed the death song of agony. That's actually my third favorite John Deck record.
I was just going to say 9-Inch Teeth is my favorite tribute band, so...
Fleeing in panic, the rest of the pod propelled themselves as one body away from the carnage. The megalodon did not pursue, but instead continued to feast on the soft flesh of her prey, swallowing thousands of pounds of warm blood and blubber, obsessed with her kill, oblivious to all else. And then the Meg sensed the rapid vibrations from above.
Dun dun dun!
Which I think is a helicopter, as we'll find out on the following page.
Oh, yeah, and does the shark jump out of the water to attack a helicopter?
Fuck yes. Is there a scene where, because reasons, 8 helicopters simultaneously crash into each other and explode?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't know about you, but I like my, say, nature-based horror stories to include a healthy dose of wacky races.
Well, this book's got that. It's also got a healthy dose of wacky racists.
Well, speaking of which, I'm not going to read from one of those sections, but I will read from a section that I think, once again, casts our protagonist in a light that's less than favorable. As you mentioned earlier, everyone in this book is kind of a raging dickhead.
But how the protagonist is such a cipher, it's hard for me to imagine that there could be anything on this page other than, like, amiably lecturing people about sharks or sometimes submersibles.
Well, I mean, the professor, the ex-Marine Argonaut, I believe, Navy Argonaut,
so
one or the other.
He's like a Tom Cruise guy. He used to be a hotshot submersible pilot, but something went wrong and a couple guys got killed on his watch. But it totally wasn't his fault. But now he's obsessed with sharks because he thinks that's what caused him to crack up on his last flight.
Yeah, he saw the Meg, and no one believed him, and he got sent to a mental ward due to some machinations of his evil superior and commanding officer, who we find out later is even bigger asshole than you think.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think this is kind of a good take on Jonas, who is our main character. Definitely not an aspirational character for the type of author who does Skype interviews in a muscle shirt with weightlifting equipment behind him. Not at all, one bit. Jonas forced a polite smile, then made his escape to the bar. The air was humid in the windowless ballroom, and Jonas's wool jacket felt prickly and hot. He asked for a beer, a glass of champagne, and a gin and tonic. The bartender pulled a bottle of Carta Blanca out of the ice. Jonas cooled his forehead with it and took a long draft. He looked back at Maggie, who was still laughing with Bud and Harold. "Another beer, sir?" Jonas looked at the bottle, suddenly realizing he had emptied it in one gulp. "Give me one of those," he said, pointing at the gin. "Me too," a voice said behind him, "with a lime." Ooh. Jonas turned. It was the balding man from the book signing and lecture. He looked at Jonas, peering over his wire-rimmed bifocals with the same tight grin on his face. "Funny coincidence, meeting you here." Jonas regarded him suspiciously. "Did you follow me?" "Hell no," the man replied, scooping up a handful of almonds from the bar. He gestured vaguely at the room. "I'm in the media." He offered his hand. "David Adashek, Science Journal." Jonas ignored it. "You're playing a dangerous game, Mr. Adashek." "How so?" "What is it you want?" The man finished a mouthful of almonds, washing it down with a swig of his drink. "My source told me you made the Mariana Trench dives. What he didn't tell me was what you were looking for." "Who's your source?" "Former Navy guy, just like you." Adashek slipped another almond into his mouth, chewing it noisily like a stick of gum. Ooh. "Funny thing, though, I interviewed the fella about 4 years ago. Couldn't get a word out of him. Then last week he calls out of the blue, says if I want to know what happened, I ought to talk to you. Did I say something wrong, Doc?" Jonas's eyes blazed at the shorter man. "Be careful. I wouldn't want to see you choke on your nuts."
Wow. That is also extremely unlike the version I had.
That is a very, very long build up to a really shitty payoff with the choke on your nuts. But.
That is fucking awful. I want to read just a tiny juxtaposition from the next couple pages from my version.
Can I point out real quick? They call him Doc.
Yeah.
Call me Doc, everyone, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was Skipper.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. Either one works.
4 hours and 6 drinks later, Jonas stared at the golden eagle, now perched on the white tablecloth. I'm just going to turn the page. Somebody says, "I'm afraid I didn't enjoy the trip with my wife," that he didn't make, it turns out, "as much as Maggie did. Too many margaritas?" Jonas shook his head. "I don't drink." The bartender handed him his gin and tonic. Is that supposed to be a joke? Is that in your version? I don't get it. Like, he's drunk off his ass.
Yeah, I mean, the scene ends with him puking in a trash can in my version.
The scene ends with him, he located Maggie and Bud clinging together like a pair of drunks. Bud's hands were caressing her back, working their way down. Jonas watched as Maggie absent-mindedly repositioned his hands to her buttocks.
That's not in mine.
Jonas let loose with a hard right to Bud's jaw. "Keep your hands off my wife's ass."
Okay, that is in mine, except he says, "That's my wife's ass you're grabbing, Bud." Because I had that line highlighted.
Anyway, a side thing, there's another thing where Jonas is about to get in the ship and he's imagining Terry Tanaka, his friend's young daughter who's expressed some interest in him. He's absent-mindedly imagining her in her bikini.
Yeah.
Does Steve Alten know what absent-mindedly means?
I don't think so. I think there's a lot of things that Steve Alten doesn't know what they mean.
I try not to generalize too much about, what women do, but I don't think women absent-mindedly put people's hands on their butts very often.
That's a good point. That doesn't seem like, oh, whoops.
Just straighten out my stocking, go ahead and, fix my hair, put the hand on my butt. Moving on.
Yeah, absent-minded professor, I was just thinking about. Not frequently putting people's hands on his ass, unless I completely forgetting. It's been a while.
Knocks over a flask with one hand, puts somebody's hand on his butt with the other.
Whoops, I'm so clumsy.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's go ahead and let's do another game. I understand you have a what would they do? Or sorry, a what is your fave?
I do.
So here's a song.
What is your fave? What is your fave? When you're presented with a list of options, what is your fave?
All right, let's hit them with it.
Yeah, so as we've described, this book is more of a tossed salad or a nice chunky nog than like a well-blended soup. So I would ask you, Jay, what is your fave thing this book is made of? Jaws, Michael Crichton, Dan Brown protagonist / exposition, TV movie beats. What is it?
For me, it would be busty women. Because, there's a lot of them, and they're explicitly described using the word busty several times. There's a lot of stuff that sounds like, say, maybe you had a friend in high school who watched a porno and then wanted to describe it to you. Because I had a friend who did that, and it was always really awkward. There's a lot of that in here, and it's pretty entertaining to read.
It does have that kind of like excited but ignorant 8th grader imagining what sex is like.
We've mentioned this before about other books, but this book is horny.
Yeah.
It's not like sexual in a lot of ways.
There is no sex anywhere in this book.
Oh, there is in mine.
Oh.
He and Tanaka.
What?
Yeah, they totally do it.
Oh man. I didn't.
And then he pushes her away because he fears that he's going to die on his next trip down into the trench, and he doesn't want her to have the pain.
There are at least like 2 moments where he does something incredibly stupid and, almost explicitly suicidal in this book.
Yeah.
Like one where he just like leaps into the ocean during a storm to swim a half mile to rescue 2 people from the shark.
In your book, is one of them the ex-wife?
I don't think he does that for the ex-wife. He shows up and tries to draw them away.
Oh yeah,
from
that's
the
what
ex-wife,
I'm thinking of.
but he's in his super submarine at that point.
Yeah, in my book that happens, and then Terry Tanaka is so impressed that she has sex with him.
Wow, that's bad.
Yeah.
And that's your favorite. Wow. I guess my favorite would be just the total like pulp novel gore.
Yeah.
I did like his adoption of that particular kind of trope from, better books. And it pains me to say this, but like better books, like Slugs.
I was just going to
or
say
Night of the Crowd.
or Rats. Yeah, I was
or
just
Rats.
thinking that. Yeah.
So it's actually kind of nice to see an American like try his hand at some part of that genre, because I think all of those are English
Those
books.
are, yeah. I guess I should qualify by saying favorite can mean many different things to many people. And with me frequently on this book, it's laced with a healthy dose of sarcasm. And so my favorite part to laugh at
Yeah,
was definitely the description of babes.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
all right, let's move on. Let's do a little something called What Would They Do?
Sometimes intentions are hard to define, and others the clear as day. So tell me, what would they do?
All right, so I'm going way out of bounds here, because normally on What Would They Do, we talk about characters from the book.
Yeah.
We try to put ourselves in their shoes and see how they'd react to certain situations.
But it sounds like this time you're firing up the jet ski and towing us way out into deep, deep waters.
Uncharted waters, my friend, because what I want to do here is kind of extrapolate more based on reality. Now, Mr. Alten, before his success in the world of literature, was the general manager at a meat packing plant. He lost his job on Friday the 13th, which it mentions every single time this story is told.
Bad luck.
And then 2 days later, got a book deal. So he had been writing this book during his off time, working at a meatpacking plant. So what I'm asking you to do is put yourself in the shoes of one of Steve Alten's co-workers. How would you respond to his repeated attempts to get you to read his manuscript? And if you did read it, how would you give him feedback without crushing his obviously fragile male ego and inevitably getting fired?
Okay, so he's just my coworker? We're not like...
He's the general manager, so I mean,
So he's my boss.
He's everyone's boss, yeah. But you got to imagine he was trying to get people to read his shark book.
No, definitely. So I'm imagining that a meatpacking plant is probably a lot like the warehouse jobs I've had. So
Yeah.
probably the only interactions we're having that aren't, put this over there are taking place on the loading dock while we're smoking cigarettes. Oh, Jesus. Yeah, no, Steve, I'll definitely... You know what? You know what I would do? I would play the long game.
Yeah, the must have slipped my mind.
Longer. I would wait to give my feedback until there was a long-running podcast that I could inexplicably glom onto. And then 106 episodes in,
Yeah.
we'd get around to doing his book. And I would be mostly good-natured about it without being completely evasive about its flaws.
Okay.
So I would play the very, very long game.
I think I would just tell him, I learned a lot about sharks.
I think it depends on your mood, because I think you might do that, and I think you might actually just be the guy who's like, yeah, it just seemed really derivative of Deep Blue Sea, and then just let him stew in his juices for an hour.
Fucking hello, Cool J, man. Which, incidentally, if you've seen Deep Blue Sea, it's a completely different story than this book.
But it is, until you said LL Cool J, I was remembering a slightly different ocean movie. But yeah, no, it's got the same tone. Deep Blue Sea has the same tone as this.
Oh, for sure.
Like
Except,
there's definitely a jet ski Treat Williams kind of scene, maybe.
yeah,
Did I
but
have
Deep
that
Blue
right?
Sea, the shark is like genetically modified and has the intelligence of a human being and stuff, and that's the big hook.
Or even a shark.
Yeah. So, okay, let's move on here. I think we've got a couple more things we could do. One of the ones I really want to do is Biggest Surprise. So here's a song.
Definitely.
Never run empty, we're vigorous guys. As the show runs longer and bigger in size, got them hungry minds and the rigorous eyes. Let us tell you about this fucking book's biggest surprise. Boom!
All right, Collision. What was your biggest surprise about this book?
I was not actually that surprised that I had some fun reading it. I was extremely surprised at two story beats. One, that they set up the end of Jaws will blow it up with a CO2 canister and then don't pay it off. That was a little savvier plot-wise than I expected for
Yeah.
kind of a slightly derivative piece of work. But the biggest surprise to me was that the last shark our heroes have to fight off is not, in fact, the giant megalodon that we've been hanging out with for 250 fucking pages, but is like a 12-foot newborn megalodon that has survived. And that's like one last little bit of threat. It's that thing that Stephen King does that drives some people absolutely bonkers, where like the book ends and then there's 20 more pages, including like one final tension ratcheter.
Yeah.
And I get that maybe that is defensible or not with respect to Steve King, but with respect to Steve Alten, I think that was not a pleasant surprise.
Yeah. Okay, so my biggest surprise here should serve a twofold purpose. A, it's going to blow your fucking mind, man.
What?
And B, hopefully will, preempt some corrective emails. Because, as I learned today on the world's most educational website, Wikipedia, megalodons did not coexist with dinosaurs. They lived tens of millions of years after dinosaurs went extinct. So for a book that purports to be reeling off shark facts at you, there are some gigantic fucking flubs in this when it comes to facts.
Author's note. A tremendous amount of research went into the making of this novel in order to maintain a high degree of realism. The author wishes to acknowledge and recommend Great White Shark by Richard Ellis and John E. McCosker, Stanford University Press, 1991, for further reading and as an excellent source of information on both megalodons and great whites.
Well, megalodons...
So this book has the pretensions of its convictions.
Well, they definitely did exist in prehistoric times, quote unquote. But yeah, apparently, while they are the ancestors of great white sharks, they were more like woolly mammoths or something that came along many years after dinosaurs. So a megalodon could not tear up a T-Rex unless somehow it also had a time machine.
Okay,
Thank you very
that
much.
would be fucking
The
awesome.
time machine shark.
Yes.
Ooh, once again, get Hollywood on the line.
Shark with a time machine, I think, is going to be the next big thing. I do want to say that in this book, That was your biggest surprise?
I think my biggest surprise is a book that is so explainy didn't bother to get like such a huge basic fact right, you know? Maybe that's a better way to phrase it. A book like so obsessed with explaining things to you, making such a gigantic factual error. But I have another one here that I wanted to mention. I found an interview with Steve Alten where he names his favorite authors.
Oh, shit. What? Okay, was it anybody from the What Is Your Fave list? Like basically,
Yes, Crichton is one of them.
Okay, okay.
But in addition to Crichton, there's some real humdingers on here.
Okay.
Anne Rice.
Huh.
Tom Clancy.
That I forgot to mention as one of the obvious influences. Yeah.
Ian Fleming, which I guess is just for the over the top sexism.
Okay.
And here's my favorite one.
Well, and the the tight story. I mean, we should note that a lot of the scenes in this are broken up into like 5-page chapters with like mini cliffhangers, like cliffhangers of the sort like, Jay, can you imagine a shark so big? Chapter end.
Next chapter. I can't imagine a shark so big, said Jay. But yeah, the author he saves for last is my favorite.
Am I going to guess?
You can, but you will never get it.
Dr. Seuss.
Howard Stern.
I'm sorry, I thought we were talking about authors.
No, Howard Stern is, as far as I know, only wrote Private Parts. It is also worth noting, too, this interview was conducted in 2004. So, I mean, maybe the tenor of the times, I don't know. Repetitive
and bikini clad and mildly obsessed with younger women. Yep, nope, story checks out.
Yeah, it tracks, but I was thinking a lot about, like, if somebody asked me my favorite authors, like, Howard Stern is a weird ball to put in the air.
Yeah, Jay, who would you say has really influenced you as a writer? And you're like, I'd say I'm pretty much a mix of Shakespeare, Chekhov, of course, Dr. Demento.
Yeah, exactly. Art Bell. By the way, our author has done interviews on Coast to Coast AM.
Really?
Yep.
Please tell me somebody called in and was like, so is this you trying to tell us something about the oceans? Do they actually contain vast prehistoric monsters?
I don't know the context, but it would be awesome if Art Bell brought him in under the pretext that this was legit.
Right. Could a megalodon get beat up by Nessie?
Who would win in a fight, Superman or Megalodon?
Oh, I mean, Superman, obviously.
Yeah.
Unless they were at the deepest part of the sea, because Superman, as we all know, is powered by the sun.
That's true.
And there is no light at the bottom of the sea.
I need to call in the Prince of Atlantis himself, Aquaman.
I want to, yeah. Or Prince of Tides, who I would call in. I want to digress for 1 second and talk about the single stupidest question I have ever heard, given its full context, on the radio, which was asked by Terry Gross, Emotional Ghoul, when the guy...
Sorry.
The actor from Justified was on. I believe his name is Timothy Oliphant. And she describes some scene about, like, throwing a cigarette near a gas tank or firing a gun near a gas tank such that it explodes. Like an open, somebody's putting gas in their car. They take the nozzle out, leave it open. Something happens next to it, and the car explodes. Mm-hmm. And she asks the actor on the TV show, is that real? Could that happen?
Oh, Timothy Oliphant is definitely my number one source of thermodynamics information, and yeah.
Yeah, like I will never get over how dumb that question was.
That is a very dumb question.
Sorry.
Okay. I know...
We'll probably cut that part out.
Maybe. I know everybody at home has been waiting for this. We can't escape from doing this segment with this book, I feel like. So here it is, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody else. Of all persuasions, Russian roulette.
Russian roulette, Russian roulette, Russian roulette, not actually Russian.
But yes, now is the time for us to read randomly selected parts of this book. Collision, you have a hardback copy, so why don't you begin flipping pages? I'll tell you when to stop. Stop.
Wow. Weak and disoriented, Barnes managed to get his head above water. His board was still attached to his ankle by its leash, and he held onto it with both hands. His nose was broken and bleeding from both nostrils. His chest burned painfully. Barnes cursed under his breath and looked for the reckless sailboat he thought he had just hit. "I'll kill that asshole," he mumbled to himself. He tried to hoist his bruised body onto the board, but fell back into the water in agony. At least 2 ribs were broken, but the worst pain came from his chest. Looking down in the fading light, he was shocked to see that most of his tan skin had been sheared off.
Ugh.
The subcutaneous tissue clearly exposed,
Ugh.
blood seeping from the wound. "What the fuck?" he muttered.
Subcutaneous is a gross word.
Yeah,
Oh, man.
extremely.
So I just punched in some random numbers here, and for my location, I just randomly punched in 4 numbers, ended up here, and I'm so happy.
Okay.
On September 30th, 1954, the Nautilus became the United States Navy's first commissioned nuclear-powered sub. The submarine would shatter all submerged speed and distance records and become the first vessel to travel beneath the ice floe to reach the geographic North Pole. After serving the Navy for a quarter of a century, the famous submarine was eventually decommissioned, but only after having logged nearly 500,000 miles at sea. As Jonas watched, 2 officers showed themselves in the sub's conning tower. "Holy shit, it's Danielson. Can you believe this? My former CO? Yeah, pal, I already knew. A friend stationed on Guam told me Danielson volunteered when he heard you were involved. In fact, it was his suggestion to McGovern to use that old tin can to go after the shark."
That is some elite level sub-splaining right there.
Yeah.
Wow. Jay, does the Nautilus prize historical artifact from our Navy's glorious history survive this book? Or does it get turbo fucked by a shark?
It gets turbo fucked by a shark, but I want to mention, I don't know if it's in your version or not, at least 5 points in this book, it's described that the idea to bring the Nautilus in to chase after this shark, is because it's extremely unpopular with environmentalists that they're going after the shark to kill it. But, quote unquote, people love the Nautilus. Is mentioned at least. Now,
Yeah.
I'm willing to bet the same people who are super into environmentalist causes aren't getting fucking head over heels about military history.
I mean, most people who really, really think that we should protect our world's oceans. I mean, this is an ocean planet.
Yeah, definitely nuclear submarines are high on their list of cool things.
Yeah, most of those people are not like, what we should do is build giant nuclear reactors and then drive them around under the water.
And it should be mentioned that the shark pierces the core of this sub. It's explicitly mentioned, but there's no ramifications at all except
No, they
now
just
there's
seal
a
it off.
huge chunk of uranium floating around under the ocean somewhere.
There is a pretty funny joke where one of the, grim soldiers, somebody's like, "Is there a radiation leak?" And he's like, "Look at the water coming in. We'll drown way before there's any radiation poisoning." It's like, okay, that's relevant, but it's not the only reason I might have asked if there's a radiation leak.
Maybe the fact that you're already dealing with giant sharks. And by the logic of this type of book,
Yep.
you don't want them anywhere near radiation because that's how you get like fucking Sharkzilla or something.
Well, and that's how the sharks power their time machines.
Ooh. Oh, man, I got to think about this some more. We should probably take a break.
The sharks have to kill the nuclear subs to extract the fuel to power their time machine to... Tune back next week and we'll tell you.
Copyright 2018. I don't even own a television. We just mailed something to ourselves registered, so don't steal. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. We have left that shark behind. We're done talking about Meg, a novel of deep terror.
Or have we left that shark behind?
Who knows? It could be still lurking directly off of our stern.
Get me to the chopper.
Or all 8 of them that will simultaneously run into each other. This is the segment where we recommend things. And, just going right off of that cartoonish visual that we just discussed, I want to recommend a musical group that I've just recently discovered. Might be old news to a lot of you. They are called Muckapaza, Mucca Pazza. It's a 23-piece performing art marching band that includes 4 cheerleaders, a tuba, electric guitar, a guy who plays a very small electric guitar, and then just a bunch of random horns. And everything that they play kind of sounds like Frank Comstock's theme from the Rocky and Bullwinkle show. And I just can't recommend it enough. They have albums. I mean, that's cool, but I would look up their videos because their live performances are amazing. They actually march, but then randomly they'll just run around chaotically or say fall down and all perform on their backs. And musically, it's very, very interesting, especially if you have a predilection towards horns, which you may have guessed from our recent ska digression, is a sweet spot for me. You will really like this band. They have 2 baritone sax players.
What?
So, Mukapaza, I might be mispronouncing it, but I just spelled it for you, so look it up. You will dig it, I promise. They're very weird. So
I'm going to also stay on the non-literary tip because it's been kind of a hard week. Next week is actually probably going to be worse. So I haven't done a ton of the reading that I would like to have done. So I'm going to recommend a pair of movies that have kind of a similar energy to The Meg.
Oh, so Sharknado 2 and Sharknado 3.
But a little bit less of the bullshit baggage.
Okay. Well,
So-
I don't know what you're talking about.
So Sharknado 4 and 5,
Okay,
you know, the revitalized new blood.
The
to
ones with
series.
Mark McGrath.
And I'm going to recommend a movie called Raw, which is a French movie that came out, I guess, late 2016, early 2017. The less you know about it, the better. But it is very good. I might have actually recommended it before.
I don't think so. Doesn't sound familiar.
It is real good. Like I said, know very little about it going in. And then I want to get the second one right as well. Yes. And I'll second that with another French horror movie called Trouble Every Day. Both have strong elements of bad people in worse situations, I think is what I would say. And both are well worth your time, and both will probably fuck you up a little bit. So, recommend it.
Okay, cool. So moving on, I believe we have some letters.
A, letter B, letter C, letter D, letter E, letter F, letter G, letter, got a lot of letters.
Okay, so yeah, you send them, we read them, etc., etc. Letters. What you got?
You send them. I unlock my phone. I navigate to the correct mailbox, and
You better get off that phone or you're going to get eaten by a giant shark.
oh, not again. This one is from Anna, or maybe Anna, fake last name, and it goes like this. Catalonia gives airport a nice middle finger.
Cool.
Better written than anything in the Meg.
I was like, that's a really good headline.
It is, right? Hi, guys. I am a children's librarian working at an international school in the Barcelona area. Part of my job entails looking up English language media resources around the city so I can give recommendations to parents and students about where to find English books outside of our school library. I would say head to Las Ramblas, bum around the hostels, and just pick up the shitty books that are left behind.
I bet you there's a copy of Wild Animus at least one of them.
Unfortunately, my job also entails constantly checking out books like Ready Player One because that stupid piece of crap is the most popular volume in the whole school library. Kid's gonna kid, you know. Anyways, I was looking at the website for a secondhand English bookshop when I noticed the following in their FAQ. Thought you guys might get a laugh out of the italicized bit. Do you take any books? As long as they're in English, pretty much. There are a few exceptions. Most computer manuals, language teaching books older than 5 years, university course books, old mass-produced novels that cannot be classified as literature or classics, for example, anything with the word airport in the title. That is such a specific and sneaky diss.
It's good.
I love that. It's also a pretty good guideline, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%.
Anyway, love the podcast. Please do The Selection sometime. It is so bad.
Is that the Reese Witherspoon movie?
I don't know. I don't think I've ever heard of The Selection.
I think that's Election, and I don't think it was Reese Witherspoon. So never mind.
Election is great.
I was trying to make a funny.
I didn't get it, but I do now, and I'm on board.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for writing in. We always appreciate airport disses. That book was a fucking trial.
I was a little bit of a slug. I actually downloaded the free part of one of the follow-ups, which was about a hotel, and
Oh no.
and was kind of grooving on it.
Is it the same thing though? Is it just like hyper detailed like depictions of how hotels are run?
Oh my god, the first 3 pages are just like handsome 6'6" hotel general manager Jim Big Balls walked through and checked the sheets.
That sounds kind of fascinating.
He frowned and said, 2 molecules more starch per gallon. I'll have to remind the cleaning crew. It's that kind of thing.
No, I mean, that's a shadowy world that you don't have a lot of insight into normally. How do the minibars refill themselves?
An underpaid
I know.
lady, usually from smaller country than this one,
Yeah.
does it for $8 an hour. I think. I don't know. But anyway, yeah. So if you are at home and your bookstore has any particularly funny disses, please feel free to share them with us at idon'tevenownaTelevision@gmail.com, or take some funny pictures of them and post them to the I Don't Even Own a Television Fun Time Party Pit on Facebook, which you can find. Can you guess where? That's right. It's on Facebook at I Don't Even Own a Television Fun Time Party Pit.
Yeah. Don't use Twitter. It's bad. But if you do, follow us there, IDEO TV Pod.
Yep. And we've always been kind of a little bit mellow about this, but now we need to ratchet this up. We need to turn the screws. If you're listening to this and you haven't rated or reviewed us positively, that's a bummer, and we really wish you would. You should tell your friends, spread the word. Tell the damn AV Club that they can cover an independent podcast that's not about true crime.
Yeah. We don't have those earwolf fucks, folks. We don't have the Max Fun Brigade pushing us into the public eye. We need your help.
We're just 3 dudes.
Well, I mean, unless you count our army of publicists. No, that's just me, getting drunk and going on the internet and
yelling
at people. Yeah.
I mean, look, if you don't want to take us seriously because we don't have a publicist, I will commit to doing a funny voice and pretending to be a publicist to anyone who can figure out my phone number. That is the Chris Collision promise.
And that's a good one. So yeah, please definitely rate and review us. And as always, this episode is brought to you by our subscribers on Patreon, where we are at IDEO TV Pod. We appreciate your support.
Yep.
If you're listening and you want to give back to the show, that's a great way to do it. And we also have lots of bonus content there for you too. So, hey.
I mean, an entire free episode, an entire extra episode every month. And then we've been putting out at least one extra, smaller reading, not a full episode, but smaller bit, every week for a little over a month now. So there's a lot of stuff there. We think it'll be worth your time. We hope it puts a smile on your face.
Yeah, and I mean, definitely there's going to be a lot of shark-related material coming soon because, there's a lot of stuff from this book we didn't necessarily get a chance to read that I think you deserve to hear. So check us out on Patreon for sure.
Yeah.
But as always, we appreciate you listening and we thank you. And until next time.
This book bites.
Oh, gosh.
My name's Jonas. I'm carrying the wheel. Thanks for all you've shown us. This is how we feel. Come sit next to me, pour yourself some tea.
Steve, thank you so much for agreeing to sit down for a brief interview with us again at IDEO TV. I'm so sorry Jay couldn't be here, but you'll have to put up with me. We've covered a lot over the last hour or so. Is there anything you'd like to tell your fans? Is there a message for Rudy or something out there?
Well, listen up, dudes. Sharkomania's running wild. For all the little meg heads out there, I just want you to eat your cartilage, your omega-3s, and get enough sleep.
And I guess, should they stop swimming?
Yeah, definitely stop swimming, dude. Jack.